4 Black Lives Matter activists have just been charged in the firebombings that took place in Little Rock, Arkansas back on August 25th in 2020. See, what happened on that day was there was a large crowd, right? Basically a protest turned riot of far leftists. You can call them what you want, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, or just communists, because they all are. Well, they held this violent protest gathering at the Little Rock Police Department's 12th Street substation. And whilst they were there, they, did their usual peaceful thing and punctured the tires of police vehicles and then threw Molotov cocktails inside them. Some of the individuals went hunting for other different parking lots of this police station so they could go ahead and target those police vehicles as they had planned on doing beforehand. Now, before I go on, we've got these 4 Black Lives Matter people charged, but imagine instead if it were 4 conservatives or just 4 people on the right who were charged with firebombing police cars, which is what we're talking about. I mean, you would know the story, right? You would know their names, you would know what they did, they would be referred to in the media as terrorists. The media would be showing not just their faces and their names, but also their family members. Did you know this person's parents owns, this bakery or what have you? Go and target or boycott that bakery. That's what the media does in these cases. But, of course there is no case that quite parallels this. But instead, because they are Black Lives Matter people, they're protected by the media. The media is actually, well, I guess you could say, performing the job of being the enemy of the people. So, since the media isn't going to do its job, I think it seems important that I'll go ahead and do the job instead. So the people who have just been charged are Brittany Jeffrey, who's 31, Renee Goddard, who's 22, Aline Espinosa-Villegas, who's 24, and Emily Nolan, who's 27. They were all arrested and charged following a months-long ATF investigation. And that's important because why the ATF? Why not the local police department, right? Because it was the police department's cars who were blown up or, set on fire. Well, in these leftist areas, they simply won't charge and follow through on those charges with prosecution far leftists, regardless of the amount of damage that they do, regardless of, like whether they're using lasers in police officers' eyes. You see these cases repeatedly just dropped, regardless of the amount of damage that they're actually causing. And so, in this case, the ATF had to step in and issue them with federal charges. So the 4 have been charged with malicious destruction of property belonging to an entity receiving federal funding. That's kind of a long charge, but it's sort of a technicality. You see, the federal government funds a lot of police departments and makes it possible for them to get things like police cars. And in so doing, they've found kind of a loophole here in that the federal government or federal agents can charge people with the federal crime for damaging that police car, since the police car was funded with your money, with federal funding. So they've been charged with that, and also with conspiracy and possession of a destructive device. Now, 3 of the people who I mentioned were actively, apparently, involved in using the Molotov cocktails on the police cars. They actually went and broke the windows and all of that stuff. One of them, on the other hand, was involved in just allowing her comrades to assemble the incendiary devices in her home. Yes, that was Brittany Dawn Jeffrey. She used her home as the bomb-making lab. Seriously. It just seems like a really dumb choice. But anyway, she also live-streamed her arrest on Facebook, because she's such a victim. Oh, at least she wants you to think that she is. She describes herself online as your local blacktivist. Really, blacktivist. Imagine if I called myself the whiteivist and only got involved in areas where I thought white people were being, affected. Can you imagine? That's Brittany. Yeah, I'm sure she's a really nice human being. And by the way, I have to wonder, why weren't these people charged with terrorism? Because that's what this is. When you commit acts of violence in order to, promote your political ideology or for political aim, that's the definition of terrorism. And when Black Lives Matter were engaged in burning down neighborhoods, they were doing so to terrorize. That was quite literally the whole point. And all I can say is, people, get involved in your local politics. This is why I keep hammering the issue of getting involved, because if you don't, you essentially have these leftists in positions of power in the police department, in the sheriff's department, and in the DA's office, all of whom can just choose to not do anything. Or, in some cases, you'll have a situation where the police will make the arrests, and then the district attorney will refuse to press charges, will refuse to actually prosecute, because you have a Soros-funded district attorney, and so on. Get involved in your local politics, because it really does matter. Now, back to Brittany Jeffrey, the Blacktivist. She led a bunch of different Black Lives Matter riots after George Floyd died. I won't say George Floyd was killed because I don't think that's accurate. He would have died whether or not the police showed up. He died of a drug overdose. I mean, it happens. She has other pending charges, including disorderly conduct and criminal trespassing from other protests turned riots. In fact, all of them do. They all have different charges from, these events that they've been to in the past. But those charges, in the other cases, were all dropped. That's exactly what I was talking about just a minute ago, where you have these district attorneys who are leftist and often Soros-funded, who just decide they're not going to prosecute, the people who are on the left. They just get, essentially, they can do whatever it is that they want. And it's outrageous. It really is. Renee Goddard, another one of these women, considers herself to be a journalist, having previously published works at KUAR Public Radio, and a gay publication too called Autostraddle. Yeah, the gay publication called Autostraddle, and various other far leftist outlets too, like truthout.org. Yeah. But my whole point here is, you almost certainly didn't hear about this story. You almost certainly didn't hear about 4 Black Lives Matter activists who were firebombing and have been charged for that firebombing, which again should be called terrorism. Because there is a message being sent right now by leftist cities throughout the United States, but also throughout the media. If you're a leftist and you do something criminal, you can get away with it. It's kind of like this wicked collaboration between those cities and the media. The cities will just drop the charges, and the media will pretend that nothing has ever happened, that nothing did happen. The media, in fact, covers up instances. They call them peaceful protests. You'll have, reporters who will stand with fire behind them in one of these protests and call it peaceful. Surrounded by flames, but not peaceful protests. And yeah, it's completely ridiculous, but that's actually beginning to influence, I think it has influenced, the state of what people think we live in. For example, most people don't think of leftists as being violent. They don't. They think of right-wingers as sometimes being violent or scary, but not those on the left, even despite just how much leftist violence we had throughout 2020. When you talk about Seattle's Chaz, their autonomous zone, with the shootings that took place inside of it, Portland's autonomous zone with similar results, all of the different arrests throughout the nation, when you just think about how many neighborhoods have been burned, how many businesses have been destroyed, how many police have been blinded by these high-power lasers used by Antifa members, and apparently none of it matters? Of course it matters, but the media didn't cover it accurately. If they had, that's the picture people would think of when they think of leftists, at the very least when they think of far leftists or Antifa or Black Lives Matter. But they don't, because of that very spin put on reality by the media. So get your friends and family members off of the mainstream media treadmill, because if people just use that stuff as a source, as their reality, then they will be living in an alternate reality. And that's a big part of the problem that we have right now, is that there are a lot of people who live in this alternate reality where leftists are just peaceful. They're just fighting for virtuous causes or something. So do what you can to free your friends and family members now. And I want to keep on covering stories like this because I think it's important that they get some exposure, that we can change the way people think about leftists by simply putting a spotlight on what these people have done and who they really are. Wait, if you enjoyed that video, please remember to like and share. I can't grow without you. Also, if you want to be reliably notified of new videos, don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter. If you're able to support the production of these videos, I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe at Subscribestar, or maybe get one of the healthier products, or even get some merch.